Hi, Dr. Randy. We are here again with your weekly podcast.
Hi, Ryan. This is so much fun talking with you about all these important things that mean so much to me. To date, I've written over 250 articles for Psychology Today online. So if I did one every single week, I could go on for years. So this is really a wonderful opportunity for me to share all the things I've learned over the past 4+ decades. And I hope people are interested and can benefit by them. This one's going to be a little unusual because every single place you read on the internet, it's how to make a relationship better. I'm just as guilty. I've written hundreds of articles on this, how to
Mhm.
change it when it's broken, how to pick the right person, and absolutely encouraging people. You need to have great communication. You have to work as a team. You
Mhm.
have to make each other a high priority. All those wonderful things that make relationships work, but sometimes they still fail.
Yep.
Even though every single thing's in place, they still don't work. And so I've always been a sort of a natural sleuth, a sort of a rascal sleuth. And I determined to figure out what goes wrong when everything else seems to be going great. So I've decided to approach it from a completely different angle.
Mhm.
And this is the angle. When people first meet each other,
And before
they,
you go on, just wanted to make
pardon
sure
me?
that the title of this is the article, which we'll also be posting on your website and social media and LinkedIn, is
Uh-huh.
what intimate relationships are not supposed to be, right?
Exactly, exactly. So, so approaching it from this angle a little bit differently, what happens when people first get together is they tend to say, "Oh, this relationship is just 90% perfect, just absolutely perfect." Yeah, there are a few things in that other 10%, but we have so much love and so much connection and so much happiness and so much attachment, we can solve anything. But these things I'm going to talk about where people expect relationships to be, these are the things that over time sometimes become deal breakers. It's like over time they begin to disturb the percentage of positives and negative because
Mm-hmm.
people become sort of allergic to them over time because because they had these expectations. This is what relationships would be from the beginning, and they didn't pay attention to what relationships are never supposed to be, even in the
Mm-hmm.
most beautiful, passionate times. They just assumed them. So I decided I would go back and kind of look at the things that over time,
Mm-hmm.
those misguided expectations actually turn into deal breakers and ruin the relationship. Does that make sense?
Yes, I mean these are the people
Okay.
that already have the relationship and continue
Yeah,
to develop that relationship. So yeah.
absolutely. So I'm going to talk about them, just a few that when I give these examples, people will come back often when they write to me, what about this? What about that? Well, of course, every relationship is different and there's always going to be more, but I try to come up with the ones that come into my office the most often so that they'll apply to the most people in the most situations. I'm always extremely grateful when people write to me at randigunther@cox.net and tell me where they have additional ones that I can take into consideration, always open to learning. So let me start number one with ownership. When people are first in love, they think that their relationship should come first, no matter what. They sort of own each other. They become sort of territories to conquer and then own. And they truly believe that that relationship, no matter what happens, no matter how life changes, no matter what unexpected possibilities occur, that they should always make the relationship first. And that's just not true. It's actually a kind of a childlike fantasy, that whenever I come home from school, there will be chocolate chip cookies and milk on the counter automatically. It just isn't true. And so sometimes relationships don't come first. Sometimes one's own personal needs or even self-serving behaviors or even things that happen over time that didn't exist when the people met change and alter the course of that relationship. And people should never be ashamed to be able to say, this is more important to me than us right now, even though us will always be important in this particular moment. It doesn't have the priority of number one.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be That's what relationships are not supposed to be. People are not supposed to believe that the relationship will always, no matter what, come first and above everything else. So let's move to the next one, because I know we have to do these in kind of 15 or 20-minute sections. And as you can tell by me, I could go on for hours about any of these. So the second one would be the exploitation of vulnerability. And this is really important. When people love each other deeply, they tend to open up to the deepest secrets of their lives with each other. And other people come in and kind of want to fix that and help them. But people are not basically altruistic. Most of us are more transactional. So when people come in to help people, very often they want something in return. So it's very, very important not to use another person's vulnerability or the places in them to your own advantage. For instance, if somebody grows up with a very cruel father and you decide you're going to replace that by being the wonderful, kind father, but you sort of expect that person to appreciate that and to take in what you've given them and to be ever grateful for it. No, that doesn't work. When you give to someone altruistically, it becomes a chivalrous process that is worthwhile in and of itself. So it's very important when people share vulnerabilities that you don't ever use those to try to control your partner, because you know things about them that they are susceptible to being manipulated by. And many, many people don't understand that. So if that happens over a period of time, people start withholding those sensitive and vulnerable places from the other person. They don't talk to them anymore because they can see that that's not going to be to their advantage over time. Okay, the third thing. When people are first together, they make a lot of room for one another. They try to listen to who they are. But over time, if some of their needs are not being met, people can begin slowly over time to try to use pressure to get the other person to be something or someone that they are not, or they thought they would be, or they now need them to be, because times have changed, needs have changed, hungers have changed, resources have changed. And the person on the other end, understandably, was purchased, if you want, was sought after as they were. They don't want to necessarily make those changes, or maybe they can't. So the person on the other end over time begins to use all kinds of pressure to get that other person to succumb to what that pressuring person wants them to be. It may be very subtle at first, but after a while it becomes kind of a slow torture. If they start using sort of bribery or little threats, or say they maybe abandon them, or maybe the relationship's not working for them, or they ghost them, or they gaslight them, or they seduce them, or over talking, or they create triangles by saying your mother agrees with me. But all of a sudden this pressure begins to build. And that's not supposed to happen in a quality relationship. When you sign the dotted line, you sign with that person to accept the positives and the joys of them and what they cost. And what a person costs is, after trying everything they can to change, it's their basic self. So people start to, in fact, focus on what's wrong and what's missing, rather than understanding you signed on the dotted line. This is who I am. You have to kind of love me for who I am. So if that kind of pressure increases over time, the relationship is going to fall apart. Okay, let's do the next one. Scorekeeping. I mentioned this a minute ago. When people are first together, they don't keep score. There's so much love and support in their sort of resources that they always feel there'll be enough generosity to go around, and they don't have to keep score, because if they do something nice for someone, it's bound to come back when they need them in return. But over time, if what happens is that those transactions are not clear, those contracts are not clear up front, a person begins to feel cheated or taken advantage of, or not getting back what they expected they would, but never asked for. When that begins to become imbalanced over time, people begin to keep score, and they use scorekeeping as a way of trying to get what they need or what they want. There's kind of a bitterness or a martyrdom that wasn't present at the beginning of the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So, when you understand that a relationship is moving towards scorekeeping, people who want to keep a relationship really intact, really love each other, they're very, very, very clear about what they want and need. They expect the other person to give the best they can, and they don't keep score as to who is giving what and who is not. Okay, the other one, relationships are never supposed to be unconditional in their love. But when people are first together, they think, oh, I'm going to love you unconditionally. That
Right.
does not happen. People do not love unconditionally. Maybe if you believe deeply in a God, there's an unconditional love there, but people are very, very conditional. I love you because I get this and this and this from you. I love you because you make me happy. I love you because we get along. I love you because being with you makes me a better person. But we cannot expect that love is unconditional. Everybody has a condition for the love they give. Maybe they give because they want to look good. Maybe they give because it's the right thing to do. Maybe they give because they don't want to lose what they're attached to. Maybe they give in some ways because they want to, look like a good person or get something in return. But those are all transactions, and transactions are perfectly normal and healthy. Chivalry, on the other hand, is when you give without expectation of getting anything back. And though people are capable of chivalry, athlete will give up a score just to pick up a fallen comrade, or in battle, a woman will stay up or a man will stay up all night with a baby, knowing that they're not going to get anything out of it except to keep that child healthy in an illness. We are capable of altruism and chivalry for short periods of time in certain situations, but nobody who's a human being can ever love all the time unconditionally. So to expect that as part of a good relationship, no, that's not what a relationship is supposed to be. And when people are honest about their conditions, when they're upfront about them, when they tell people what they want in return, at least we have sanity. We may not be able to save a relationship, but it's not crazy anymore. The sixth one is expecting to always be number one, kind of like the first, where the relationship will always take precedent, but this is a little different. It's when a person says to the other person, if you had to choose between me and someone else, going to visit your sister, or when I want you home, or you'll always, always, always in a quality relationship prove your love to me by always making what I need more important than what you need or what anyone else needs. It leaves no room for self-serving care. Every human being in the world has to take care of himself or herself first sometimes. They can't always make that other person number one. That leads to martyrdom, that leads to overgiving, that leads to service instead of love. So people that really have great relationships never, ever expect to always be number one, no matter what. It's a childish fantasy expectation that nobody else in the world will matter as much as you do to that person ever, at all times. And when people are first in love, it's like, oh yes, you will always be my number one choice. Whatever you need will come first. No, people are just not capable of that. And to have that expectation is a sign of real potential trouble at some point in time. Okay, this is one of my favorites. When people first get together, they will tell me, oh my goodness, he or she completes my sentences. My response always is, then why do you have to talk? It's not necessary.
Right.
I mean, people can have perfect compatibility, perfect, and have dead relationships. And I've seen relationships where people are so incompatible, you wonder how they can get together, and they love each other deeply. Compatibility means we have the same feelings about, small groups of friends or large groups of friends. We have the same feelings about what we like to eat and not eat. We have the same feelings about when we should take vacations or how we should save money. Those things are all deeply important. I'm not putting them aside. Every time there's a perfect compatibility, you have security, comfort, safety, and no challenge. You also have no excitement. You also have no reason to change. You have no reason to be more interesting. So you're always balancing between compatibility and safety and comfort, and non-compatibility, which requires people to alter who they are to stay in love with that person. And sometimes when you go away, I will say to people, Doesn't matter where you get your appetite as long as you come home for dinner and bring home the leftovers. Meaning that if you go away and do something you enjoy that the other
Mm-hmm.
person doesn't, and you come back to the relationship more excited to be with your partner because you have brought something with you to
Yep.
give or to offer, that incompatibility can be the stimulus that maintains excitement and interest and fun and challenge in a relationship. Now, there are certain incompatibilities, of course, that can become deal breakers within themselves. One person, they get together and they're never going to have children. And then all of a sudden, one or the others decides they've changed their mind, but the other person hasn't. Those can become deal breakers in themselves when all of a sudden there's a true incompatibility that's so important to one person and the other person is not able to provide it. Then there's the tremendous sadness of a deal breaker nobody expected. But mostly I'm talking about the ones that over time develop slowly, like a kind of a Chinese water torture. And then all of a sudden people find themselves focusing completely on what's wrong in the relationship rather than what is right. And when people start focusing on what is wrong, they use all their resources for damage control rather than prevention. So let's look at the last one. When people, I call this the bubble. It sometimes doesn't work when it expands. When people are first together, they tend to be only with each other. My God, they sometimes don't eat, they don't sleep, they drop friends, they don't see family, they don't do as well at work, they don't maintain their hobbies. They just want to be together, and they form this bubble based upon perfect connection all the time. And then as the relationship progresses, and matures, as it should progress and mature, they realize that that bubble now has to be extended into the baggage that both people bring into every relationship. You have past relationships, you have children, you have family, you have career obligations, you have dreams, you have aspirations, you have old relationships that renew themselves. You have other things that all of a sudden you have to go back and attend to and maintain, or new experiences and ideas that come into your life that you want to use some of your resources in order to explore and do. So that bubble now has to extend into those other situations. So maybe you love the person you're with absolutely from your heart, but your best friends don't like him or don't like her. Uh-oh, we are now extending our bubble into our baggage or into our other experiences, into other parts of our lives. And all of a sudden the bubble doesn't work the way it did before. Or maybe you're with a person that just doesn't like social situations, and you're a person who has a career aspiration that requires that your partner become a kind of a corporate wife or husband, and they don't want to do that and they can't do that. And so what you're looking at that particular point is, as you extend the bubble and it doesn't work, it ricochets back into the relationship and makes it not work as well. So extending that bubble, don't think when you first marry someone that bubble is always going to stay intact. As it is exposed to the outside world, it's going to be exposed to judgment and competitive desires for that person's time. So if you don't expect that, then you are ready for it. And then you are talking to each other about what that's going to be like when you meet my parents, or when that's going to be like when I have to travel, or anything that might enter the relationship. So if you know from the very, very beginning that the bubble, as it is extended, is going to come into different situations that have to be managed, then you won't assume that, and you're ready for it when it happens. Does that make sense?
Yes, that's definitely yeah, interesting take on people that have those relationships already, and never really thought about that.
Absolutely, 100%. As I said, I could come up with more, but these are the ones that seem to come up all the time when people say, but you promised, but you said, but that's what I believed, that was real. And I'm saying, wait a minute, those promises should never have been made in the beginning, because nobody knows that or knows how those are going to work out. So if people know from the beginning of a relationship, these are the things that we're going to be facing, these are the things we're going to be doing. This does not make a bad relationship. Relationships can flourish even when these things exist, but people have to be in anticipation of them from the beginning and not pretend that they are not going to become potential deal breakers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow, that's very interesting, Dr. Randi. Thank you for that insight.
Absolutely. And, and I'm going to be writing again very soon from sort of a similar point of view. People say, oh, how can you enhance a relationship? How can you make it better? I'm going to talk about how can you actually destroy your relationship? There are behaviors that you can do in this world that are actually eating away and eroding love in a vicious way, that if people don't stop those behaviors, they can actually destroy relationship with it, whether it's intentional or not. I think we have to kind of come from the other side as well. I certainly know how to build a great relationship, but I want to talk about the other side of this a little bit, because I think I can really help people avoid some of these potential issues before they occur. Then I can go from saving a relationship to creating a relationship that doesn't need saving.
Right, right. Huh. All right, that's a lot to take. We're gonna post your notes on our YouTube channel and as well as your website. And can't wait
Yes.
for the next one, Dr. Randi. Thank you so much.
Okay, we'll be up and ready next week. I'm really excited, as I said, about doing this. It's really fun.
And again, let our audience know where they can contact you in terms of your website and email.
Okay.
They can contact us as Randi Gunther.
At Cox.net. That's my personal that's my personal email address. You can also get to me on randigunther.com. You can read all 254 of my articles on relationshipsactually.org if you'd like to. They're sorted by subject and might be interesting, and I welcome you to peruse.
Great. Okay.
And
Till
any
next
other
time.
way that you need to reach me, I'm very reachable.
Thank you, Dr. Randi. I'll see you next time.